All right. Hey, today I'm joined by Richard Lewine, founder of RSL Consulting Group LLC, where he works with leaders to strengthen strategy, organizational effectiveness, and long term execution. Richard, welcome to the Go CEO channel. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you, John. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I affectionately have these times that I remember when I was a kid. Okay, and I'm saying this affectionately to you because you have wisdom, right? You have knowledge, you have competency in this space that you're going to share today. And when I was a kid, there's a mall that's called Harlem Irving Plaza in Chicago, and my mom would go shopping, and I would sit down with the little Italian, little Jewish couples like that would surround me on this bench. And I just remember the times of why I later on in life, now almost 50 years old now, why I love interviewing people that have a certain wisdom about what they've done and how they're impacting the world. So I was excited to see that you registered to be on. So let's get into it. So Richard Lewine, where is that coming from? What was kind of your roadmap of corporate or entrepreneurial success? And we'll start with that.
And not corporate. I started in a family business in the apparel industry in Philadelphia. And God bless my father, wise man. He said, "You're going to start in the shipping room and you're going to do whatever the shipper says." Okay, Dad. It's a good place to learn a business because what's going out the door is the result of what all the people have done prior. So there couldn't have been a better place to learn. And then I moved up, I can't even say up, out of shipping, ran on the floor, became a manager, got into sales. But what happened there, I spent 20 years in the apparel textile industry and I left it because of the people. The industry almost doesn't exist anymore in the US. It's offshore. Part of the reason is the leadership and management style of those who own those apparel companies was get the most you can out of the people and don't worry about them. Just get them to work as much as you can. So I had to get out. It really was disturbing to me. And I went to an organization called LMI, Leadership Management International, Leadership Management Development Materials, because that was what I had to do. I saw enough pain and enough bad management, poor leadership, lack of a caring culture to satisfy me for the rest of my life. And I wanted to contribute to making changes. That's the
Mm,
beginning of how I got here. I don't know if
interesting.
that's, yeah,
No, yeah, no, it's lays the foundation, right? Having been in an entrepreneurial family, seeing kind of the steps that your dad took to even put you into organizationally leadership roles and having to learn from
yes,
that, but then seeing a whole industry around you, kind of
yes,
decay because of that style and obviously headwinds of market and offshoring and these types of things. So interesting.
yeah.
So just out of curiosity, was it a type of bit like were you building suits or sweaters? Like what type of.
It was it was called the trimming business. We decorated, if you will, women's wear, particularly women's and
Oh,
kids,
okay.
blouses and dresses, big names. We dealt with them. I won't even mention them because there's no one alive today except me who remembers them. Uh, and they would send us their fabric. We would do our thing to it, send it back to them, and then they would make the apparel. That's how it
Ah,
worked. So
okay.
we were labor only. We didn't supply any product except some trim product. So we were doing a lot of business. There were 100 people in this company. We were big, and that was way back. I won't even tell you how old I am. It's a long time ago, is what I can tell you. That's what it was about. And everything else is history from there.
Okay. So you obviously built, 20 years of a career in there. You obviously see the industry kind of crumble before your
Yes,
eyes and
yes.
see that change. So then what industry that did you then decide, was it intentional or something that you just had a connection and you went into the next scenario?
No, I made the connection in response to an ad. And
Oh, okay.
they were saying, we need somebody. And I said, well, I don't know if you're for me. That's how it started. One of those classic stories. And I got flown to Waco, Texas. And now here I am. But what happened was because of the attitudes of the people in the apparel textile field, I had determined that I'm going to help change that. So
Mm,
now I have spent the last 40 plus years working with the leaders of small to mid-sized organizations to help them understand that their people are the reason that they're still in business and they need to
mm.
be treated as human beings, not as just cogs in a wheel. I mean, there's lots of stories, and they become more and more prevalent as we move through time. It's about leaders who understand, pardon me, to shut off my phone, which I forgot.
So you're sharing about leadership, yeah?
Yes, and now I lost where I was. I'm sorry.
No, no worries, no worries. No, look, I mean, you made the transition, right? You get
Yes.
flown out to Dallas and you start to think to yourself, okay, I have some sort of passion for this. How am I
Well, it
going to
isn't even,
change it?
it's not even some sort. Um, in 2010, Paul Pullman was appointed CEO of Unilever.
Mm,
The first thing he told his board of directors was, I'm not giving you any quarterly reports.
mm,
So if you have to have them, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to give them to you. What are you doing? I'm going to be working with my people because they are going to make it for us or not. So that's where I'm focused, not on numbers on a piece of paper to give you a report. 10 years later, at the end of his tenure, all he did was return 220% return to the stockholders. That's all he did, focusing on people, not quarterly reports. For me, that's an idol for me. I mean, there are more. There are others who do that. Not many, though. And so my focus is on first the leadership, and I call it responsible, sustainable leadership. That's what's required to do what you described in your opening, long-term viability. Um, my book that's been in process for 100 years is called Leading for the Long Term. And that's what it's about. It starts with articulating a vision that's a paint by the numbers picture of where this leader wants the organization to be at some point in the future. I just did a piece on Substack this morning about organizational transformation, and it's evolutionary. I mean, revolutions are short term, all kinds of revolutions. That's why they're called revolutions. But then something has to evolve. And it starts with this picture that gets articulated well, and everyone in the organization needs to know what that is. Where is this leader taking us? Where does this person or this tight-knit group believe we should be in a period of time? And today, unless you're uh, a family office, which is long, very patient money, um, it's going to be 3 years, maybe as long as 5 years. Because what's happening, this leads me to something else, a book that everyone needs to read who's in business called Super Shifts.
mm,
Incredible observations and addressing the changes that are being made globally and what has to happen in order to not get buried by them. You need to do something about it. So I recommend that for all business leaders, actually for anybody who's in business. But you need to be able to take that vision and then formulate some strategies which are flexible enough to deal with these shifts that are coming, whether it's biotech or it's technology or it's uh, cultural changes or it's geopolitical. It doesn't matter. You need to be able to deal with them to keep your organization going because it's going to affect you one way or another. And the strategies that are formulated are designed to support the realization of this vision. Because if they're not, it's a lose-lose instead of a win-win deal. And the challenge with that organizationally, and particularly misunderstood in the SMB market, the small mid-sized market,
Mm,
is that um, it, it's you can't execute a strategy. What you need to do is, as Drucker said, allow that to degenerate into work. Well, what does that mean? That means you need a system of executable goals that people can get their heads and arms around. Because
mm,
most workforces, and it doesn't make them bad people, it means that's who they are, they can't get their head around, well, I can't make this happen. I give me something smaller, or let me tell you what I can do to help support that, which is the ideal. You share the vision, you share the strategy that you believe that the usually it's upper level leadership. That could be three people, could be just the one person. No more than seven in a room is how I look at the strategy process, this whole upper level thing. Uh, from the strategy, to get it into the workforce, you have to ask the people, first of all, do you know what your job is? Secondly, do you understand what the strategy is? And thirdly, what kind of goals can you commit to that will contribute to the realization, if you will, the existence of the strategy? Because it's not a thing that is tangible. The strategy is, well, as an example, um, we want to be the vision is we want to have I'm going to just stay with revenue. It's just easier for most people. And
mm,
in a revenue of $100 million in 3 years. We're starting at 50 million. I'm just picking numbers here. Strategically, you need to do things. You need to say, well, we want to be the number one or two in our bathtub manufacturing industry in order to make that happen. Well, how do you do that? So you can't just become the one or two. It has to degenerate into executables. Well, we have to have a sales force that does this. We need product, we need marketing, we need all these other things. That's the execution. And that's where, again, one of the things that we talked about before we even got on here is how do you make sure that you can get where you want to go without clarity? And
mm,
the clearer it is and the more handleable the requirements of execution are for the people who make it happen every day, the better the chances are of the strategy becoming real. We are number one in our bathtub industry. Therefore, we can meet our 3 year vision or our 5 year vision. Well, you got to be number one because everybody did what they were supposed to do. Sales, manufacturing, distribution, all of that good stuff had to happen. These are
mhm.
all human factors. They're all dependent on people. I guess I should throw in something about AI here. Maybe not. I'll wait a while, a minute or two.
No, it's relevant, right?
It is relevant.
AI is, in certain leaders' mind, it's replacing the human factor. In other meat leaders' mind, it's adding to the leverage and to the exceptionalism of the human factor, right? So it depends on which side of the realm are you. Is that something that you've, kind of
Well,
struggled or tangled with over the last year?
yes, it's a struggle in from the tech. I learned how to use it for me in my small business. And if it's looked at as a tool and an assistant, something, a method, a process, a concept that can be helpful, it's going to work. If it's looked at as a panacea, forget about it. It's not. It will close you down. And a
Hmm.
leader who's looking at it in order to cut numbers, headcount, they're going to pay the price for that, in my opinion. It's an assessment. I don't have grounding, so I can't make an assertion, but my assessment is it's going to be a problem for that person.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Well, there's there.
facile at prompt development, and I don't want to mention names. Maybe I should. I don't know. I don't want to be putting names out there necessarily of the kinds of tools I use because it would look like they're the only ones or the bad ones or whatever they are. At any rate, AI will now help those who are on the execution side. You're trying to say something. Your mouth was
No, no, no. I mean, you're right on point of kind of where I was going. So keep it going.
okay. Um, the execution side of it can probably make the best use uh, of the power in AI, and it can be a tool for doing research. It can be a tool for an agenic one. Agenic one can make calls and do all that kind of stuff, which are executable. So as a tool, it's going to be great. I'm sure that call centers, I don't have any as a client, but what I know about them, they're going to be able to use AI really effectively if leadership in a call center says, okay, the call comes in, we have this ADC working already, the automatic call director or ACD, but we could do better by channeling it even more precisely to the right single person instead of a group. And AI can do that, can help
Hmm.
them figure out how to make that happen. So that's how I see AI using in executables. In the bathtub business that I formulated here, um, we figured out that 8 footers are going to do better than 6 footers because people are bigger than they were when bathtubs were first developed. And they want to be able to stretch their legs out, and other things are going on. Anyhow, research and that kind of stuff, I see it really terrific. And I use it in creating images and stuff that I put up on LinkedIn, and then I have to go over it because there's dead giveaways that you used it in the text if you use it for text writing. So you don't want that out there because people will say, well, it's not him, it's just AI. No, it's not. Not in my field. Not for me, anyhow.
Yeah.
Now that brings us to the the fourth phase, if you will, in what I call the system, the structure within which execution is to happen, that these people need to work. Now we're at the place where the leaders, owners of these
Mhm.
apparel industry messed up, not taking into account the culture, because a culture of anger, because they were all angry guys. They were guys. I mean, that's yes, the designers, a lot of them were women, but the guys who owned the companies, the sweatshops in New York and all of that stuff, and in Philly, which is where I'm from, they were angry because of whatever the reasons were, and they took it out on everybody else. I mean, it manifested not as just screaming. There was a lot of that. Um, but the way they dealt with people was short shrift. It didn't matter what you thought. Just do what I told you to do. Don't ask questions. You're not paid to think. That was what I had to work. What I'm committed to changing. And in some cases, I've been successful. At others, they push back. At any rate, there needs to be a structure within which a culture like that can flourish rather than have the people floundering around all the time and being upset and quitting and not caring whether there was any quality. So that's all human stuff. Uh, and again, this is a personal opinion based on experience. It really starts with, is this person in this role well matched with their attributes, talents, and skills to what it takes to be consistently effective in your performance for the long haul? And it begins at the front door. And the way that recruiting, hiring, interviewing, onboarding, and all of that stuff is done, if the match isn't right, it doesn't matter what you think. Yes, you've got a warm body in a slot now, and that's all you've got is a warm body in a slot because it's always about the people. And are they glad to come to work in the morning, or are they saying, oh, God, I got to go into the office again. I got to go to the factory again. I have to go to the car lot again. I got to build another bathtub today. If that's their attitude, you're going to get what comes out the other side, and it isn't going to be happiness and good product. It's going to be something less than that. And customer service is what people keep talking about, but that isn't the issue. Every customer gets served. The question is, what's the customer satisfaction like?
Mm.
And that's a human factor because the customer is a person and they're going to respond best to another person, not AI. So all of this stuff, when you put it together, creates a challenge of how do we get the leaders of small to mid-sized business to understand first that that business is existing for them because the world doesn't really need another small business. Not that it's bad or wrong, but the world got along without that small business, and it'll get along after that small business is gone. So you, business owner, and I'm talking really small as a start, need to figure out why are you keeping it alive? Because it's satisfying you first. And if it doesn't, why are you bothering? So we help
Mm.
them clarify their goals. Why are they doing this? Paying a heavy price, putting up with the people problems that every business has, helping other people solve their problems. What's in it for you? So we help them clarify that first. Then we can get on to, well, now we know why you want it here. What do you want it to look like? You see, we came full circle. What do you want it to look like in the 3 years hence, in the 5 years hence? How much of a price are you willing to pay? What do you need to do? Are you willing to work extra time? Are you willing to hire people? Are you willing to do it the right way? Whatever that means for you. And how long are you willing to do that? This is all about the human factor. I keep coming back to that because Paul Pullman proved it in my book. He paid attention to the people and the stakeholders, not just the stockholders, because there's a lot more than just stockholders. The stakeholders got the return they wanted. The product was good. And it's been 5 years now since he's out of there. I have not kept up. I believe the last time I looked, it was still operating the way he would operate it. And there was when what was it, the quit, the
Quiet
major,
quitting or what?
yeah, there was a special put on by the OD Association, and it was just clear that people were going to continue to quit. This was right around the pandemic, until this was like a protest. It was a protest, not like one. Listen, bosses, we have to change the way things are done here. You have to begin to treat us differently. And we can't come to work because of the pandemic. So now we have remote only. I've been using GoToMeeting and all that stuff for years before the pandemic because it works.
Hmm.
And I do my development work over Zoom because I can see you. Now, I can't do everything as well as when I had you in a room and I could grab a hold of you and say, wait a minute, why aren't you listening? But mostly it was asking questions, and that works on Zoom as well as it does live. Are we in the right? Are we doing okay here? Are we
No,
talking
yeah. I mean, look, RSL, remind us again just to kind of put that stamp in our brain.
responsible, sustainable leadership?
Okay.
That's what RSL stands for.
Hmm. Yeah, and look, the wisdom that you just shared, right, the last few minutes, embodies things that SMBs have to do, but they don't have directionally.
Exactly.
I'm a great cook. I start a restaurant. I can turn the bolts really well, so I become a HVAC business, whatever it might be, right? So it's interesting, but at that dynamic and fulcrum of like, hey, where do I take the time as a small business that only 9% or so reach $1 million in revenue? Okay, in all of America, that's a real fact.
That's
So
right.
if you're at 300,000, at 700,000, at a little bit over 1 million, where is it that you feel, and that's revenue generation, but if you think about it from the perspective of most small business owners want to wear 18 hats, right? And they're the marketer, the HR, the operations, the payroll, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I guess from your perspective, when are you seeing the ideal moment, if you have one, for a small business to say, okay, hey, look, I've gotten this to a traction where the business not only went from MVP, well, to market product fit and all that type of stuff, and now I'm selling, but now me, along with bringing in talent, have to adjust our leadership. So when do you feel like that's a fulcrum point or a focal point?
My experience has indicated to me that it is not necessarily about the dollar volume, but it is about the number of people in the organization.
Okay.
Because if you have more than one, you have a challenge. And you begin to get pushback and issues when you have three, four, five people. So it also depends on the kind of business. I have worked with organizations doing $100 million with 10 people in your
Hmm.
kind of business and $100 million with 100 people in labor intensive businesses, manufacturing, distribution, sales, where the people are doing things. So it depends on a lot of things. You're right. The entrepreneur, he or she does not necessarily want to wear all those hats. They wear them. And until that person, this is the transition that I just put up this morning, realizes and acknowledges that they have to change if they want their entity to grow. When they realize that, then it begins to become clear when it should happen in that organization, because the leader needs to do the changing first. If the leader can acknowledge, well, wait a minute, I've got these three blind spots. Lewine came in here, did a quick assessment, a climate survey. The disparity between my view of what's going on and the people's view of what's going on was about this big, the gap, the
Hmm.
development gap. Because it's almost like 98.6% of every time I did one of these assessments, that was the size of the gap. Huge.
Wow.
Leadership says everything is fine. People say, are you kidding me? So then the leader says, okay, well, if that's the case, let's find out what's going on. And we go a little further, and we don't have clear descriptions of what's expected. We don't have any standards that we adhere to. It isn't okay for somebody else other than a designated leader to make a decision. Well, they're all growing pains. They're indicators of real growing pains. So there's a transition from entrepreneurship to more professional management that has to happen if it's going to grow. Because you can't have, my view is, and I use the word can advisedly, can't have 100 people in an organization without clarity. If you don't have clear goals, how much of what by when, and who's responsible, and who accepts that responsibility, then you're going to have chaos. Chaos is not going to produce a good bathtub. There's going to be lots of chips in the porcelain. The faucets are going to be on backwards, and the water's going to run upside down. That's what's going to happen. And your HVAC guy is going to put in a heater instead of air conditioning. You need to have clarity of expectation of people's performance and how often, and they need to be tracking and measuring how they're doing so they know what to fix. And I mean, we're getting into stuff here now. Self-image. People's self-image is the driver of their performance. If the boss is constantly beating one up, the self-image is going to be hammered. And you're not going to get the kind of performance on a consistent basis that you want. You're just not. Because if someone has a low self-image, they're not worthy. Well, if they're not worthy, they have nothing to give. I mean, we're talking about people. That's what
Hmm.
it's all about. I'm going to keep coming back to people. AI
No,
has to be used to support people and what they're trying to do.
no, a lot of wisdom in that. And if you think about it, go for your community, you're listening to, something that you can really tangibly bite into, right? And experience, because if you're an entrepreneur, a CEO, a founder of a company, or even just in your own life, right? If you think about the 5 F's that I talk about in my book, faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, how are you showing up and moving those dials based on what you just said, your own image? right? There's a gentleman named Ed Milet. I love when he says,
Personal,
"What's that?"
no, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
I was gonna say there's a gentleman named Ed Milet who I follow for years, and he talks about the vision of the leader has to be this big so that your people can fit in it, right? And it has to be that big because if your vision is this small, you're only attracting these types of people, right? So that
Exactly.
are small thinkers. So and it equates to kind of some of the things that you're talking about. So all right, nowadays, there's so many coaches, consultants, fractionals, CMO, CFO, COO, da da da, all this type of stuff. And look, I mean, I think it's what's happened in the last 10, 15 years. Certainly 5 years podcast host and being a commercial banker, I've seen it. C-suites leave and maybe they can't get another job, so they become a consultant, right? And stuff like that.
Right.
Um, and that's great because I think certain companies at certain times, if they pick the right executive coach, consultant coach, they could really flourish from that wisdom that that person has. So tell us a little bit about your business as that right now. Are you, somewhat part-time? Are you very selective of who you work with? And what's that structure look like to pay you to engage with you?
I'm thinking because when I started in Philadelphia, I had an organization of, I think, 8 people at some point. We had 3 conference rooms in our offices running all the time with leadership development, management development, which is half of what I do. Strategy, vision strategy, and the stuff we just talked about is the other half of my business. So what does it look like? Yes, I'm selective. I don't like to work with big, whatever that means, organizations where I can't talk to the ultimate decision maker because my work will change the culture of the organization. Everyone else can say no. The ultimate leader is the only one who can say yes, because
Mm.
when they hear the way we do things, which are the things that you just talked about, um, the culture is going to change. So um, Martin Seligman, positive psychology. I'm pretty old, but I'm a learner, a constant learner. I got certified by the Wharton School because positive psychology turns the practice of psychology on its head. It says, stop dealing with what your mother did to you. Let's talk about what you're trying to achieve in the future. And what are the psychological factors your people need to deal with? Back to people again, in order to overcome the challenges they're facing. So, what happens is I use the technology of goal setting as a catalyst to help people change. First, you have to get the people to acknowledge who they are. We're back to self-image. And then you can have them as they achieve more as an individual, they raise their self-image, permits them to do more, face bigger challenges. Because if they try and do it without facing who they are, they're going to get collapsed halfway up through whatever they're doing. Then you have the people who are now surer, clearer. Now they're in the organization and they can begin to affect the change in the organization, but the leader has to do it first. So we're back to that. And so my organization is me right now by choice. I didn't want, when you have an organization, you deal with people issues. Well, I did that. I don't want to do that anymore at my advanced maturity. I've had enough of that. I'm dealing with myself and my clients. And a colleague of mine, so I incorporate Seligman's positive psych, and I incorporate a colleague of mine, Al Raffetto, Dr. Al Raffetto, and into a structure that acknowledges Gallup's poll numbers are real. At first, it has to acknowledge that engagement is lower than it could be, needs to be, or should be. Doesn't matter what the actual number is, it's lower. And we created a double-headed arrow, and the top half is green for a flourishing environment where the people can flourish. It's a matter of degree. And in fact, Seligman has a light blue arrow he used. It doesn't have a lot of demarcation, but it has a midpoint, and above it is flourish and below it is flounder. But the factors were in his. So you have to have this clarity. You have to care about the people. There needs to be expectations, all of the good stuff. If that's not there, the top half of this arrow is green and the bottom half is red. So at the top, it's flourish, and at the bottom, it's flounder. In the middle, it's neutral, which is that would be great if everybody was at neutral. Unfortunately, because if you look at the Gallup poll numbers, most organizations are in the lower half of this arrow where the people are floundering. There, they leave, and this is all, some of this is cliche stuff, and it's just out there in the literature. People leave bosses, they don't leave jobs. And my experience is that's true because if their leader, manager, whatever their title, supervisor, manager, leader, super, senior man, doesn't matter. If they're not getting from them what they need as a human being, they're going to find their way out. They just are. So business today, particularly SMBs, but it's big ones as well. I mean, if you look at Tom Peters in Search of Excellence in 1983, I don't know what the actual percentage of companies is that are no longer in business, even though they were excellent in 1983, because they didn't move with the changing times. And I'm back to now super shifts and Stephen Fisher and Janae Duane, who wrote that book and what they did. If you're not paying attention to what's going on and shucking and jiving accordingly, you're not going to be around in 2033 or 2030. You're just not,
Yeah.
because things are changing so fast, so rapidly in every one of the domains that we all live in. And the uncertainty, right? The only way to mitigate the downside of uncertainty is to take certain action. Doesn't even have to be the right action, but you have to take the action. You got to gamble. You got to take the risk. That's how you mitigate the downside of uncertainty, by saying, we're going to do this. And then you build the goal systems that get you to do this. And if you do that and explain the positive benefit to the people who need to make it happen, you're going to come out okay. If you don't tell them why, they're asking themselves, if they're not asking you, why am I doing this? What's the
Mhm.
outcome? What's in it for me? They're asking that anyhow. You might as well tell them.
Yeah. No, I think it's a rare well, not it's not rare. It's an intentional way of running a business, right?
Correct.
It's intentional because I just had a podcast earlier and we were talking about a friend of mine, he's in pharmaceutical. They do pharmaceutical to feed and poultry and whatever all that stuff. And he was telling me
Right.
about this company in Brazil. They're actually the biggest manufacturer and developer of all this stuff, and that's one of their clients. And it's interesting because within the organization, they're massive. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, and he's one of the EVPs, and he travels a lot and stuff like that. And I deal with emerging middle market, right? Like 5 million, 20 million, 30, 50, 100 million type of companies. And to hear you talk about this is so essential for a company to be able to have a component of their business cycle grow from 5 to 10, from 10 to 30, 30 or 100, that type of thing. So it's interesting to hear that. So I love that perspective. And certainly people go for SEO community, hopefully you've been listening intently, taking some notes, and then buying some books because Richard has shared some incredible insight. I'm actually thinking of 5 or 6 leaders. I am personally going to buy this ship. You call
Super
it ship
shifts.
super shifts.
Super shifts.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I hope I'll give them a copy of my own, but but the super shifts, it's really interesting of how you can influence that component of your day-to-day business. And I feel a little bit compelled to say, like, I just made a move, right? I went from a $250 billion bank with a nice brand, very comfortable, to a smaller bank who just had bought another bank and they merged, and our CEO just left, the one that got merged in. And it's interesting because I'm literally seeing what you're talking about in the Chicagoland area team. And some of
Mhm.
the things I hope change, but I
Well, I'm
also,
happy to help you do that, you know.
yeah, yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I'm an RM, right? I don't know, I have executive level, influence, but it's very interesting to see a smaller bank now be in a position where I'm high enough to see kind of the flat organization and what's going to happen. And this is just from just my dealings with people, and I'm not even
Right.
in the minutia of every day, but it's interesting. I'm excited to read that book, and maybe even give it to some of the executives that
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to give it to as a gift, but who's this guy? He's only been here 6 months. How does he know us? And da da da. That could be, a retribution, but uh, but it is what it is, right? I think we all need to push each other in a
Yes.
kind and forgiving way, but also push each other to really, you know, uh, take action, right? And
Well,
change. So, all right. So look, we usually change our end our podcast with CEO, right? And we've talked. I love the way that you structured your conversation here and the suggestions you've given. So I'm excited about that. I don't know if it's going to match up exactly to how we usually end our podcast, but let's take a try at it.
let's try it.
So
Sure.
C is for client experience. Okay. If you take 30, 60 seconds, describe what it means to deal and work with RSL from a value proposition standpoint today.
Um, Many years ago, a magazine, a publication called Boardroom, which is no longer in existence, early in my start, put a label on me, a Grand Vizier. Well, the Grand Vizier was the guy who told the king that he better not do what he just said he wants to do because he's going to have an uprising. So I am relentless in my pursuit with my client of their goals, not my goals. I don't ever tell a client what to do and I never make a decision. But if they tell me they're committing themselves and their money and they want to get to be over here, whatever that means, because it's different for all of them, then be prepared to hear from me. I'm going to hold you accountable. That's what it's like to work with me. It's not for me, with me.
I love it.
You're
I
going,
love it.
okay, that's the C.
All right. So E is engagement. What would you say people can experience from engaging with you? Do you like to go out to dinner? Do you bring people into a room and have seminar style conferences? Are you a note sender? Like what helps people understand how Richard Lewine engages?
Dinner is not so important. I mean, I love to eat, but that's not what it's about. Yes, I do like to bring people into a room. And if you fly me to Chicago, I would bring you into a room. If you want to do it on Zoom, I can do it on Zoom. It's not the same, but it's effective. So it's there are two approaches. As I mentioned early, the leader needs to get very clear. And the first step in any transition, any transformation, any evolution, the leader needs to be the one first to acknowledge it and begin to take the steps. And then throughout the organization, I have a client. I don't know how much time you want to take here, but two client stories if you want them. Yes? No? No.
I'm running a
Okay.
little short on time,
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah, no, but yeah, just wrapping it up. Like, how do people like to, or you like to engage with people?
Face to face, one on one to start, and then groups of
Okay,
like people. Yes. But not
awesome.
having the boss in with the group because then they won't be feel free.
Genuine. Okay. All right. They won't be authentic. I like that. I like
Right.
that. All right. And last one is operational excellence. So CEO, right? Client experience, engagement, and then operational excellence. What would you say has changed throughout the last 20, 25 years of your business and RSL as far as, you know, tools that you're using, demonstrative things that are helping you to be more linear and focus, organized, those type of things, just out of reference from, a consulting type business.
Well, on from my perspective as a business, um, technology has made a significant change. In Philly, my biggest client came from a direct mail piece, which they had to cut the coupon off, fill it
Ah,
in, put it in their own envelope and put a stamp on it to get it back to me. Became
wow.
my biggest client in Philadelphia. That's the time. That's not happening today. Now, maybe direct mail works, but not like that, I don't think, on a regular basis. I have several clients that way. So technology, it's harder to get in front of somebody, so you need to be persistent. And the requirement to be consistent and persistent is has become even more important on the sales and marketing side. Internally working with clients, their understanding of that it is still about the people and not the technology and the equipment and the computers. It is not. It's getting them to believe that it's still about the people is the biggest challenge I have. That wasn't a problem as much in the past. That's the major change.
Mm. Yeah, so it's been a paradigm shift
Oh
of
yeah.
of what people are going through. Interesting.
Yes,
All right,
yes.
Rich. But well, tell everybody how to get a hold of you. What's the best way to connect with you, and where do you enjoy being able to at least start that discovery type call?
Two ways. 215-872-6025. I'm in Florida. It's my old Philly number. I love it. Put a +1 in front of it if you're out of the country. I do have out of the international clients. RS Lewine, Lewine at rslgo.com. And the other thing is on LinkedIn. You can get me. I'm there. Just
Nice.
Richard Lewine, RSL Consulting. I'm there.
Well, Richard came through a gentleman that I've known for many years, Rocky Romero. We were
What a
on a
guy.
networking type call, and I put it out there, say, hey, as a value, anybody that would like to be on the podcast. And Richard, you're the first one that took that to heart, and hopefully, this evergreen content and the wisdom that you've shared with the world now, that'll go out over the next couple weeks and share with them even little snippets of kind of that master level thinking that you have. I hope will help someone, and looking forward to seeing what the results come from that. And thank you for being on the GoFCO channel.
Thank you for having me there. I really appreciate it.
All right.